Hey.
Fighting over the top on those handoffs, making it tough for you to get a clean handoff.
Up top, Capella. Wow! Giannis, what a block!
Alright, Joel, so it has been 4 years since Giannis last won an MVP award, which is kind of crazy to think about because I feel like when we look back on this era of NBA basketball, Giannis will be, or at least should be remembered as one of the better players of this time period. But what might be even crazier is that if you compare Giannis's stats this season to his MVP seasons, then he's blowing it completely out of the water. He's currently leading the NBA in points per game at 32.7, while also doing that on a career best 61% from the field. And perhaps the biggest reason why he is able to be doing this is that he has stopped taking threes. In fact, this is the second time his entire career that he is averaging less than 1 3-point attempt per game, and rather he's focusing a lot more on working on his mid-range game, whereas if you look at his shot attempts from 10 to 16 feet, he is absolutely smashing from that range, shooting 54%, while his previous best in a season from that exact same range was 43%. And for the most part, I think it's really just that change in shot diet that is revolutionizing Giannis at this stage in his career and allowing him to play just the best basketball possible for his team. Because overall, when watching Giannis play, he is still the same old Giannis. He is attacking the rim at will. He is amazing in transition, as he is yet again leading the NBA and transition points per game. But I feel like it's very easy to forget or grow normalized to how historically great Giannis is in transition. I mean, he is literally the poster boy for the one-man fast break. If teams don't bring multiple defenders to get into his way, he is going to get to the rim, and when they do, he now has the playmaking abilities to kick out and hit open shooters. But even in a half-court setting, a really simple offense for the Milwaukee Bucks to run is to just get Giannis the ball in the post and either let him attack one-on-one, or more likely, defenses are going to bring extra help defenders, which at that point, Giannis has grown extremely patient with the ball in his hands. Again, his passing and playmaking have gone to a point where he can just pick apart the defense, pick apart rotations, and it usually leads to some good shot attempts. But I will emphasize yet again that it is the mid-range shooting from Giannis that has grown his game to another level. Specifically in the semifinal game against the Hawks, had a couple of really nice, sweet pull-up middies that, again, if he's able to remain consistent with those, makes him such a even more terrorizing player. And then, of course, when talking about Giannis, you also have to mention the defense. Remains one of the best defenders in the entire NBA with his size, skill, athleticism. You know, there's a reason he's been top 10 in Defensive Player of the Year voting for the past 6 seasons, including the 1 year where he won the award. I think what stands out most about Giannis on the defensive side of the court is you can always see his determination pop off the screen. And of course, one great example of that was the huge, game-sealing almost block of Clint Capella at the end of this game. It was very reminiscent of his big block from the 2021 finals that helped clinch that series. And again, it's these kinds of plays that cement Giannis as one of the greatest two-way players to ever play the game. Now, when talking about the Bucks, you also have to mention the other superstar there, Damian Lillard, who, when looking from an individual standpoint, I think gets overhated a little bit for his time in Milwaukee so far. Especially this season, you look at his numbers, he's averaging over 25 points and 7 assists per game while shooting 37% from 3, which, as a second option on a team with championship aspirations, again, I think is pretty solid. He might not be the same Damian Lillard when it comes to the eye test that we saw in Portland, but for the most part, he can still knock down threes at a crazy rate. He is still really excellent at getting to the rim and finishing either through or around traffic. Had a couple of really awesome layups in this game against the Hawks. Obviously, the defense remains somewhat of an issue just because of the fact that he is getting older. He's not as athletic as he once was, but for the most part, with his scoring gravity and ability to pass the ball and drive and kick, I really don't have too many issues with Dame again, individually as a player. Because where I do have issues with Dame is as a duo with Giannis Antetokounmpo. Because it's pretty clear that they just don't mix well on the court that well, which is crazy to think about because when you think of them individually as players with how great of a shooting threat Dame is and how great of a driving threat Giannis is, you would think that it's a match made in heaven. Yeah, I was very shocked to find out that in the 504 minutes that Dame and Giannis have shared the court together this year, Milwaukee is a -10 in those minutes. And I just really hope you guys understand how insane that is, that for a team, again, with championship aspirations, when your two superstars share the court together, you are playing losing basketball. And I get that, 10 points isn't a lot. They can go out the next game and go on a 10-0 run and bring that back to 0. But the fact that we're even at this point of the season in the negatives is just absolutely insane. Anyway, one player who might be able to help alleviate this issue is the return of Khris Middleton, who he's only played 4 games so far this season and only around like 20 minutes a game, so still very much ramping up, but from what I've seen so far, he looks pretty good considering the context of the fact that he is coming back from 2 ankle surgeries this past offseason. The shot has not been falling so far, but the other facets of his game look really good. Especially when he has the ball in his hands. The passing and playmaking have been terrific. Had 8 assists versus the Orlando Magic in the quarterfinals game. Just that alone helps alleviate so much pressure from Giannis and Dame because it actually gives them another player that is capable of creating shots for himself and for teammates. And even the defense looked pretty solid. Again, considering the context, I can only imagine that he'd get better from here as he goes on. Yeah, I doubt he'll ever hit the level he was at back in the 2021 finals. But even if the Bucks could just get like 80-90% of what Khris Middleton used to be, huge addition to the team. Now, I honestly forget if I mentioned this at the top of the video or not. I meant to, but if I didn't, the Bucks are 12-3 in their last 15 games, which if you look league-wide, that is tied for the best record during that stretch. And overall is just a huge upgrade from their 2-8 start to the season. And outside of Giannis playing historically great basketball, another reason for that is that Gary Trent and DeLon Wright, 2 guys who were big free agent additions who were expected to have big roles on this team, haven't been great so far, have been moved to the bench, and instead some younger guys are getting bigger opportunities and have been performing great so far. One of those guys is Andre Jackson Jr. Now, he was put into the starting lineup for his defense. He's expected to guard the other team's best player almost every night. But what stood out to me most easily from this game against the Hawks was his ability to pass and just move the ball in general. He made some really quick decisions, and even though they didn't end up as assists all the time, I think he's just such a perfect piece to put next to a Dame and Giannis. I'm very interested to see how his offense looks, especially once we get later into the season and postseason type stuff, because right now he's shooting 38% from 3 on a little over 1 attempt per game. But again, I'd be curious to see what that looks like if teams, force him to shoot threes and let him, leave him open. But someone you don't want to leave open on the Bucks is AJ Green, who, again, similar to Andre Jackson, has been getting an increased role this season and is absolutely shooting the lights out. Him and Taurean Prince are currently both top 5 in the NBA in 3-point shooting percentage amongst qualified players, and AJ Green is just awesome. He can shoot off the dribble, he can shoot off the catch, he can movement shoot, standstill shoot, whatever you need. He's got a funky shot. They call him Derry Bird. He's just a really fun player in general. Not that bad on the defensive side of the ball either. But there is one last point of emphasis I'd like to bring up when it comes to this Milwaukee Bucks team, and it's a big reason why I still am not fully on board with believing in this team as actual title contenders. And no, it's not Doc Rivers, even though I'm not really a fan of him regardless. It's the fact that this defense just remains so inconsistent, especially the transition defense, which you might say to yourself like, oh, it's just transition defense, like how bad could it really hurt? But there were just way too many instances in this game against the Hawks, and remind you, this was a big game. It was the semifinals of the Emirates NBA Cup, and again, there were multiple instances where the Bucks just did not get back on defense. Even after a Milwaukee Bucks made shot, the Atlanta Hawks then pushed the ball after the make and got an equally open or even better shot within 5 seconds of the possession, which if you are a team with championship aspirations like the Bucks, this just cannot be happening. And I don't know if that's a Doc Rivers issue, I don't know if that's a personnel issue, but again, this is just something that is a huge red flag to me. Regardless of how good their record is, regardless of how historic and amazing a season Giannis Antetokounmpo is happening, regardless of if he brings home a third MVP or not, I still cannot get on board with this Milwaukee Bucks team actually being a title contender. So I'm sorry if you're a Bucks fan watching this video to end it on a bad note, but that's all I got for this one. If you enjoyed, make sure to like, comment, subscribe, all those beautiful things, and I'll catch y'all in the next one.